how to make your startup more diverse and inclusive. For those of you that don't know Donald Thompson, Donald is a good friend, and he has done so much work and talks so much about this particular topic. And it's one that's really talked about in a lot of startups these days, and even throughout enterprise level corporations also. So Donald will be taking over to moderate. We also have Dr. Deborah Stroman from Stroman Athletic and Assets LLC. And then we're going to bring back Simmi Prasad, who's also going to join this panel. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my friend, Donald Thompson. Take it over, Donald. Thank you.
Mark and Startup Summit, thank you guys for having, thank you all, excuse me, for having me. One of the things that is near and dear to my heart is how do we create an environment where we can have courageous conversations together about things that we don't understand, but we would like to. Things that we don't appreciate because our experience and context is different, but we want to lean into them. And so I'm very proud today to have Dr. Deborah Stroman. I'm going to give her a chance to give a brief introduction on herself, as well as her company, as well as Simmi Prasad. And then we're going to go into a very brief but powerful overview and kind of internal panel in terms of some different ways that we can think about diversity, equity, and inclusion from a startup perspective. Dr. Stroman, why don't you take just a minute and introduce yourself to the team that's listening today.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation to be with you today. I just love the fact that we are moving nimble and quick, because that's what entrepreneurs do. And so as Donald mentioned, my name is Debbie Stroman. I live here in the Triangle region. I'm in Chapel Hill, and my company is called Stroman Athletic and Asset Management. And I wear a few hats, and they're all focused on education. The first hat that I wear is I do teach at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I lead our racial equity curriculum for our Gilling School of Global Public Health. And I'm also an enthusiastic entrepreneur. I have a Center of Sport Business and Analytics, and boy, do we do education. We have a Basketball Analytics Summit, an award-winning Basketball Analytics Summit that brings in some of the best and brightest minds from across the world. I'm very, very blessed to be a partner with Donald with the diversity movement, working on racial equity. And so being able to talk about these very challenging concepts, these very challenging things that will bring us back to humanity. But I am very, very active and excited to be able to help many, many entrepreneurs all across the Triangle, in particular with the American Underground located in Durham. Glad to be here.
Fantastic, and thanks for that intro. Simmi, I know that you spoke earlier, but just for context, give your full background again, and then we'll jump into some questions.
Donald, great to see you here. Thank you for having me on the panel. And Deborah, wonderful to hear about all your efforts with education. Donald, I'm a fan. I also heard your presentation last Friday morning with Felicia. So thank you. I can vouch for you being out there and doing all this good work in the community. For me, Simmi Prasad, my day job is Bank of America Private Bank, and my volunteer work is my passion towards entrepreneurship. Currently, I'm serving as a president of a global nonprofit, TIE, and I'm the chapter president for the Carolinas. So thank you again for having me.
Fantastic. So let's dive in. And I'm just, I'm eager because I love to learn. I'm a competitive learner. And I'll start, Dr. Stroman, with you. When someone is forming a business, they're a CEO, they've got an idea, they're looking at getting funding, they're working on all of these different things to grow and prosper their business. Why should they also make diversity, equity, and inclusion a top item in their business strategy?
Well, there's no doubt when we talk about solutions, it also, I would say that a big indicator of whether or not you're going to have an effective, efficient solution is if you're asking the right questions. And so we have to be better questioners in our work. And generally, entrepreneurs are wired to have an expertise around their own particular passion. And if they aren't able to step back or pass the baton to someone else on their team who can ask better questions, then odds are the solution won't work, maybe for a short term, but not long term. And better questioning means that you need to have people around the table in the boardroom with a different perspective. And that perspective might not look like you. And so that's why we need more diversity. We need more inclusion, because it's about asking better questions. And that only comes from having different inputs, having different data that only doesn't, it just sits in your mind. That's the beauty of it.
That's powerful. Simmi, same question to you.
I definitely agree with what Dr. Stroman said. You know, there's a reason why all the fingers in our hand are different sizes, but when we come together, we make a fist. But each of them has a different function. Each of them has a different size. The same way a diverse team has different perspective and also keeps the entrepreneur grounded. Because the entrepreneur wants to run at 200 miles an hour. You do need somebody to say, hey, reality check. Let's look at this aspect as well. So absolutely agree.
No, that's powerful. One of the things I've thought, and as I talk with different entrepreneurs and business leaders at the enterprise level as well, one of the things that everyone is chasing is how do you push through and progress in this new economy? And we're in a war for talent and a war for ideas. In order to have the best talent and the best ideas, you need to be able to recruit from a wider net of individuals, both racial, both gender, both generational, but there's also diversity of experience. And so a lot of times people just simply think about race from diversity and inclusion, but it's so much more than that. It's the ability to create a platform, a foundation, if you will, where the best idea wins. But the best idea can't win if you only have a homogeneous organization that all looks and acts and speaks very similarly. And so I appreciate both of those answers. One of the things that when we think about diversity, equity, inclusion, a lot of folks heard the terminology, but don't quite know what it means. And so Dr. Stroman, take a minute and let's just scale back for a minute and not assume that everybody's right there with us and living this conversation. What is the difference between diversity, equity, and inclusion from your perspective?
And you are spot on. Language really matters, and more so than ever, because we have been awakened by the racial atrocity of George Floyd. And there are more people involved, white, brown, and black, who want to go beyond checking the box, right? So what we're talking about is understanding three words that are being used quite a bit, but people might not necessarily have a clear definition. And so what I'll share with you is equality, as in diversity, as in diversity means variety. And so if I were to say, and I'm going to embarrass you, Donald, what size shoe do you wear?
11 and a half.
11 and a half. Okay. And if I go on the men's side, then that means my shoe is about a 7 and a half. And if I were to offer, or if someone were to present to us, here is a size 9 shoe, or here is a size 15 shoe. Now that's variety, that's equal, but it really doesn't address the question of equity, because who is able to use that shoe? And so there's no doubt that we need diversity, we need variety, to the point we just spoke on, that we need different perspective, we need different insights, which comes from thought, geography, culture, on and on. But then there's equity in the sense of bringing in fairness. And that's where we might offer 2 pair of shoes, the 11 and a half and the 7 and a half. Or we say, you know what, we're not going to do shoes because we have so much variety that we're going to give everybody a jacket instead. And you get to write down the size that works for you. And when you have diversity, when you have equity, then you have inclusion. Because generally when you meet people and you understand that we're all human, this is about humanity, then you will want to ask people to belong. The Human Genome Project, I don't know if you all remember that 13-year research study, researchers from all over the world, $2.7 billion was spent on this research, and they said that we are 99.98% alike. More difference between a flock of penguins or fruit flies than there are between us, humans, human beings and Homo sapiens. And so we want to belong, we want to connect. And that's what happens when you have diversity and equity.
That's a powerful answer, both in terms of the depth, but the vivid examples, right? The shoe example everyone can relate to, and very, very much appreciate that perspective. Simmi, when you think about being a CEO, being an executive in the financial space, there is a lot of disparity from an ethnic and a racial standpoint from a socioeconomic component. What are some things that Bank of America is doing? What are some things that you think are really important when we look at diversity, equity, inclusion, but we look at it from a social economic perspective?
So, very good question. And I am very proud to be a part of Bank of America family. I have seen the bank come up, rise during these times of crisis, pay attention to the fact and address all the employees on what is going around in the world today. Our CEO has promised to give $1 billion of funding for causes to, help in the community. And we are focusing a lot on uh, colleges and to say HBCUs, there's a specific program to help with them. And internally, the bank has provided childcare benefits to folks till end of the year, just recognizing how this pandemic could be helping. And that is available to everyone who qualifies. There is no saying, well, Simmi can get it and Donald can, or Donald can't get it and Simmi can get it. So it has been a fantastic organization to work from within to see all this equality coming in your workplace.
Wow, that is powerful. One of the things that when you think about growing a startup, right, you have to figure out how to get and keep a customer, right? And that's kind of the foundation of any business. We kind of overcomplicate it. We have books, we have seminars, but ultimately you have to have an idea and you have to be able to commercialize the idea by getting and keeping a customer. And so entrepreneurs are stretched and strained figuring that out. The other component of building a great company is building a great team. And so one of the things that I would like you guys to share on is, how does a leader look outside of themselves, right? They might have an all-white executive team currently, but they want to learn, right? How do they take that first step, Dr. Stroman, in thinking outside of their current circumstance or situation to think with a more diverse mindset?
Well, when I think about leadership, the phrase that I use is that managers work in the system, leaders work on the system. Leaders work on the system. So that means being able to decrease yourself to say, I don't know it all. I don't know it all. And one of the things that I think I can borrow from the sports world is confidence. And your top athletes ask for help. In fact, generally, your top athletes have so many people around them, you would think that, they have their own team in itself. And so what CEOs, what entrepreneurs can do is to consider yourself as someone who's a star athlete and who's going to work on different parts of your body, who's going to work on different parts of your company to assist you. So ask for help. That is a strength as a leader. And then when you think about having favorable relationships, and so I'm reminded of the fact that we're all givers and takers, but we need to be more givers than takers. And far too often when we meet people and we're excited to meet them and we know they have something that can help us out with, we're saying, can I get this from you? Can I get your business card? Can I get your phone number? What's your LinkedIn? Take, as opposed to leading with, I'd like to help you. How can we help one another? You've just shared with me. You've just poured into my life. How can I help you? And so I think we need to be mindful of, we need to be givers. And I think that will help you keep your network. It will sustain it because you're used to giving back. And it's not just one way.
That's powerful. You both said a couple of things. Simmi, let me lead with you and just make a comment. You mentioned Bank of America is reaching out to HBCUs. One of the things that I hear, not an excuse, it's a reason, but it's not a reason to stay status quo, is I need a larger pipeline of multicultural candidates to hire from, right? I'm not seeing the right pipeline. And a lot of times I hear that, and I don't want to take it as an excuse, but I want to turn that to the entrepreneur and say, being an entrepreneur means we know how to work problems. It means we look at innovative solutions. So then why not connect with the business schools at all the local HBCUs and make sure you know the deans, make sure you know the different professors, make sure that you're available if they need a guest speaker to come in. One of the things I'm really proud of is I'm doing some work with Town Bank, which is a good-sized regional bank in our area, and Brian Reed, their president and CEO, and I've linked them up with the dean of the HBCU North Carolina Central University. And so they're going to partner together. And so one of the things that I think is really important is that we realize that our networks are a net worth. And if we're willing to share our collective networks, then we can eliminate that question of, I don't have the right pipeline to hire more multicultural candidates, because one, it's available talent, but two, it is a stretch to hire people outside of your own comfort zone and network. So then we all have to work on expanding our network. One of the things that I'll say, and I see that David Gardner from Co-Founders Capital is on the line, and his partner Tim and I've spent a lot of time really talking about diversity, equity, inclusion from an access to capital standpoint, from a VC and a venture standpoint.
Donald, before you move on, I do have a comment. So yeah. Talking about focus on creating jobs and providing the pipeline, Bank of America, and you know Felicia and Alex, and we actually made a trip to NCCU. We are in constant communication with business school over there. We've been hosting events, and we've been trying to build that pipeline. So thank you for highlighting that, but that is one of the things we're doing, and we are currently, I am personally speaking on a panel at Fayetteville State University on their business school on September 25th, again, trying to establish connectivity and build pipeline of getting the talent. So yes. I appreciate you highlighting that, but we are doing similar work, and we actually have already started on doing things in that direction.
That is fantastic. And I think the thing that you highlight is that we all have to go a little bit outside of our comfort zone in order to get the work and overcome the speed bumper challenge that's there. And those are some very good examples of how you can do that. The point that I was making in terms of access to capital is another barrier that all companies have, but certainly companies with multicultural founders. And so whether it is the folks over at Idea Fund Partners, whether it is David Gardner and Tim, I'm seeing a change in terms of people reaching out to learn and understand more from a DEI standpoint, and create a foundation for the CEOs of the companies in their portfolios to learn more. And so what I want to share is that we have this macroeconomic challenge in our environment. We have a pandemic, we got a wild election that's going on, we've got racial unrest that's going on. It would lend us to think that there's not positive progress being made. And what I would encourage everybody on this Zoom session and to remember is that in our own communities is where the change is going to really matter, right? Not to get political or not, that's not going to change this problem one way or the other. It's folks like you and I, all of us together, that are doing what we can where we sit to make more and more opportunities available. The other thing that I would ask as we go into a few more questions, we've got a few more minutes here. When you think about diversity, equity, inclusion, and again, Dr. Stroman, I'll go with you, and then Simmi. What are some points of reading? What are some points of education where people can do some self-study, right, on things? Because a lot of times, and then I'll let you guys jump in, these are hard topics to just talk about with people you don't know really well, right? You're not just going to jump in and start talking about racial equity, right, if you're not comfortable with the nomenclature. So I think it's really important that we give people tools of where they can go to access new information, new insight.
Well, I think there's so much out there that some people who have jumped in who are feeling like they're drinking from a water hose now. But I will start with understanding your own exploration. Understanding what is equity. And if you understand equity, then you know what inequity is. And so right now in our country, we have a dynamic in terms of advantage and disadvantage. Some people are being advantaged and some aren't. And so I think it's important for everybody to take the first step and say, where am I complicit? Where am I complicit in this? And so one of the things that I did when I started going down this journey of studying and exploring and working on racial equity is taking a look at my own family. I created an Excel spreadsheet and I went back and started understanding, what did my parents do? What did my aunts and uncles do? What my grandparents did in terms of socioeconomic status? What were their jobs? And did my father get a chance to benefit from the GI Bill, or any other type of military assistance that was provided from our government? What type of jobs were available for my aunts and uncles? And I found out that everyone but my mother, all my aunts were domestic workers. And so what does that mean? When you understand your history, you know that Social Security was a big part of how people were advantaged in this country. But there were two professions that were not allowed to participate, and that's domestic workers and farm workers. So how does that play out? And how does that make me feel? Am I bitter? Am I upset? Am I angry? Or am I saying, you know what, that happened then, and now I have some opportunities that I need to take advantage of, and I'm not going to squander them? See, understand your own family. Before you go off and read a book or two or articles, do your own exercise. And if you're white, consider, did my family get the house that we're in because someone got something from the GI Bill, or someone was able to attend an historically white university? Understand how you are situated. And then I think it's much easier to offer that olive branch, or to sit with someone and talk about these things, because you have your own perspective, you have your own story. And so I would say start with your own exploration first. No shame, no blame, but just understand what happened in your family.
That's awesome. Simmi, what would you offer as guidance, perspective, as people start to lean into diversity, equity, inclusion in the construct of building their business?
So, Donna, first I want to go back to your earlier comments on funding. So I want to make sure that all the entrepreneurs, don't care what they look like, Thai Carolinas here is to support you. And Thai Carolinas also has the backing of Thai Global. So the Global Network also has an angel fund where we support companies. Please look us up, contact us. If there are any startups that we can help, we're happy to do that. So that was one thing on the funding. And I want to talk to you about when I took over the Thai Carolinas organization as a president a couple of years ago. I was very excited about serving. I came on board and I realized that most of the entrepreneurs were tech entrepreneurs, and most of the board was men. And I said, well, an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur, even if they have their own hair business, or even if they are a caterer, or they run a hotel. So big thing was changing perception and adding diversity job-wise to what you were doing out there. Second thing was changing the makeup of the board, because just like Dr. Stroman said, I wanted different perspectives. So now we have a 50% women board. We have people who are of all different ethnicities, because they bring different audience, they bring different entrepreneurs, and that widens our net of helping each and every person in the community. So that is how I have looked at the board, and that is how we have grown to be a multi-ethnic, multicultural board serving the people and the entrepreneurs of the Triangle.
Oh, that is powerful.
Donald, I don't want to leave without giving people at least two things to consider. Take a good read with Richard Rothstein's The Color of Law. That book is now in my top 5 books best books I've ever read, The Color of Law. And take a look at Ava DuVernay's award-winning documentary on Netflix called 13th and The Color of Law.
Those are 2 great recommendations, and I appreciate that. As we wind down in one, I just want to say thank you both to Dr. Stroman and to Simmi Prasad for your candor, your authenticity, and I'm glad to call each of you colleagues in this movement. The diversitymovement.com has a lot of free material on DEI work, and we're happy for you to head over there. And then also via LinkedIn, if I can ever be of help, answer a question, just please let us know.
Thank you for having us today.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Take care. Stay safe.
Wow. Thank you guys so much. That was super powerful, super, informative and educational. Quick question I have for, Donald or Dr. Stroman. Keith and I, we deal with a lot of startups, right? From Startup Summit's perspective, we get a lot of startups to come in, and this topic is a challenge for a lot of them to face, right? they're not sure really where to go. And like you said, sometimes it could be drinking from a fire hose, right? They're not sure what to do or how to get there. And I know you mentioned this a little bit, but if you're an early stage startup that we deal with a lot of times, right? And you're a couple founders, maybe a small team, what do you recommend the first thing that they do to ensure they're going down the right path as it pertains to this particular topic?
So for
Well,
me,
certainly. Oh, go ahead, Donald.
you go ahead, Dr. Stroman. Go ahead.
You know, entrepreneurs, we're wired a certain way, right? We have a product or a service that we want to share with the world, and we think it's the best product and service. And we should honor that. Build your product, build your service, but make sure you're checking in with others, people who care about you, to say, okay, you're really good at this, but guess what? You're not so good at that. And oftentimes that area of cloudiness of where we need to develop further is this area around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have two Americas. We have to be honest with ourselves. And there are some of us who are playing right down the middle, and we've got white friends and brown friends and black friends, and we have no problem. We can speak one way, and we don't have to, dress up a certain way or speak a certain way, because it's all one happy family, right? We're all connected. And then there are other people who are on different sides who aren't necessarily comfortable with talking with brown and black people, or aren't really comfortable talking with white people. And I don't think we're ever going to change everybody. But those who are inspired, those who want a better way, those who know that it's important to have a diversity of thought, diversity of insights and perspectives, don't be afraid to take that first step. Don't be afraid to ask someone for help. There's nothing to be ashamed about that. And I'm speaking to brown and black people, and I'm speaking to white people. Don't be afraid to take the first step and say, hey, I need help, and I'm not good at this.
Yep. The one thing I would add to that very simply, as we were respectful of time, is reach out to folks like myself who are willing to have a cup of coffee where you can have an authentic conversation about things that you don't understand, that you don't have to stress over whether you say black, person of color, black, indigenous, person of color, African American. You can just talk about the things you're challenged with and the things you want to understand. Because part of our responsibility is to be that advocate to open, honest, and authentic conversation. That's number one. The second thing is what you measure gets done. So if you don't have diversity, equity, inclusion as a part of your business strategy, it will be easy to ignore. If you have it as a part of your business strategy, even if you're not meeting all of those marks, you're going to continue to seek those solutions. And so I would say that, Mark, as our friendship and my commitment to dreamers in general, I'm a super fan of dreamers. And so just reach out to folks. And if I can't help you, I'm a pretty good conduit of people that may be able to. And that would be my offer to folks in your network that you and Keith are working with.
Thank you so much. And, I can attest to that. DT has been very helpful to me personally, and we talk a lot of times. So great job, Dr. Stroman. You are a captivating speaker. I really enjoyed learning from you. Thank you so much, Simmi. Thank you, and really appreciate this topic and getting it out there. And we are super grateful to have you on here. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Continued success.
Thank you.